In the last section, we spoke about some of the different resources that are available to you inside this course. And before we move on and start talking about our project, there was one last link that I want to focus on in greater detail. So inside of here, you'll notice this one link that's marked as optional, and it says Editor Add-on to automatically format your JavaScript code, and then it gives you a link to a GitHub project called Prettier. So I want to very quickly tell you a little bit about Prettier and then show you how to install it on your own local system. Now, to be totally clear, Prettier is completely optional. You do not have to install it, but I really do think that this course will be easier for you to follow along with if you make use of this add-on. You might even want to start using this add-on on your own personal projects as well. So I do recommend you at least check it out and give it a little bit of consideration. Now, to show you what's going on with this thing, we're going to first check out my code editor where I've already set Prettier up, and then I will show you exactly how to install it inside of your editor by checking out the Prettier documentation. So let's see what it does. Let's see what Prettier is going to do for us. I'm going to change over to my code editor where you'll see that I already wrote a little bit of JavaScript code. Now, the purpose of Prettier is to automatically format and standardize the JavaScript code that you write. And I'm talking about syntactic or stylistic things. So things around unnecessary parentheses or unnecessary tabs or spaces, missing semicolons, missing spaces, just any type of stylistic thing. The purpose of Prettier is to make it all 100% consistent. So when we look at this code snippet that I have right here, you might notice a couple of what we would call stylistic errors, where the code that I've written really doesn't look visually correct. We'll start at the very top line. As you look at this, there's no space between the two arguments, so really there should probably be a space right here. It looks like I've added parentheses around the return expression, even though they really aren't necessary. For the calculation right here, you'll notice that I have 3 indentations, and then the same for the parenthesis right here as well. Finally, there's no semicolon at the end of the return statement or for the overall arrow function. And you'll also notice that the arrow function is missing an arrow as well, which is quite critical too. So let's see what Prettier does when I run it on this snippet of code. So I'm going to use my hotkey that's going to execute Prettier. And the instant I do, I get a nice error message that says, hey, it looks like you made a little bit of a mistake right here. And so you can see right off the bat, before I attempt to execute my JavaScript code inside the browser, Prettier gives me a little bit of a warning and tells me, hey, something is not quite here. You might want to do a little bit of a double check. So I'm going to add on the arrow right here. Okay, that looks a little bit better. And now I'm going to run Prettier again. Now when I do so, you'll automatically see all of my code just jump, right? Just a real big instantaneous change here. I'm going to undo it and then redo it again. And so let's analyze what happened. First off, it put a space in between my argument list. It got rid of the unnecessary parentheses. It added in my semicolon. It put in space between the plus operator, and then it added a semicolon at the end of the arrow function. So the entire purpose of Prettier is to just standardize your JavaScript code. Now this makes a lot of sense for use inside of this project because I'm going to be using Prettier the entire time, the entire course. So if you use Prettier as well, you're going to end up with some JavaScript code that looks completely identical to mine, and that will make it much easier for you to troubleshoot any issues or any typos that you might have. So again, totally not required, but highly recommended. Okay, last thing I want to do is show you a little bit on how to install it. Now, unfortunately, the installation process is completely different for every code editor. However, if you go to the GitHub project page, which is at github.com/prettier/prettier, and then scroll down all the way to the very bottom of the document, you'll find some installation directions for each popular code editor. So I'm going down all the way to the bottom, and you'll find the editor integration section. So I'm using Atom right now. And so, hey, all I had to do was install the Prettier-Atom package, and then I can use this hotkey right here to automatically format the file. If you're using Emacs, Vim, Visual Studio Code, Sublime Text, completely up to you. You can certainly use any of these other editors and still use Prettier. Now, the very last thing I want to tell you is that Prettier has a couple of built-in options included with it. And if I scroll up a little bit more, I apologize for all the scrolling, you'll find the options section right here. So you can customize the tab width, whether or not it used tabs or spaces, the presence of semicolon, and the use of quotes. So specifically using single quotes or double quotes. Now, just to make sure that it's really clear what settings I'm using, I'm going to open up my own personal settings right now so you can take a glance at them. And let's let this thing load up. There we go. We'll grab Prettier. So essentially the only custom settings that I'm using right now are to use semicolons, bracket spacing, and single quotes. That's it. I'm not using tabs, I'm using spaces. Finally, if you are using Atom, also note that you can automatically format all your different files on save by enabling the format on save option right here as well. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Prettier setup. I leave it up to you. It's completely up to you whether or not you want to use it. Again, I'm going to say it for a third time. I do recommend you use it. Now, if you're not using it, that's totally fine. I just want to remind you that sometimes as we're going through the course, you might suddenly see the code that I'm writing jump on the screen. And so you'll see when I save the file, everything just kind of suddenly change. That is entirely because I'm running Prettier on the project, and so I do apologize if that's a little bit, misleading or a little bit tough to follow sometimes, but at the end of the day, again, it's going to lead to a lot more legible code inside your own project. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Prettier. Let's continue in the next section and start talking about the project that we're going to be working on.